Hello, friends. In today's episode, I'm talking with James Cerbie, who is the founder and head coach at Rebel Performance. And he's a fantastic dude. We had a really great conversation. You'll see we recorded this a few months ago, and I had to record it on Zoom, so it looks a little different, but the conversation is fantastic. We talk about so many topics. We talk about the pros and the cons of labeling your members as athletes in your training gym. We talk a little bit about how you as an owner can avoid being the bottleneck to your company's growth and the power of delegating and how to do that well. And then James also shares his specific strategies and tactics for adding value to his clients' experience. He talks a lot about how to give away as much valuable content as possible. So it's a fantastic conversation, so many actionable takeaways. So come ready with your notepad and let's get started. The Business for Unicorns podcast is for fitness business owners who want actionable strategies to grow their business, take amazing care of their clients, and build a life and business they truly love. I'm your host, Michael Keeler, co-founder of Mark Fisher Fitness, and through Business for Unicorns, I'm a coach and consultant to industry-leading fitness studios around the world. Let's get started. James, what's up? Welcome to the Business for Unicorns podcast.
Michael, I'm very excited to be on here. I've been a huge fan of all the work you and Mark do for a very long time. So it's great to get on here and just to get to kind of actually meet for the first time and then just kind of, I think, have a fun chat.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Thank you so much for making the time for this. We were talking before we started recording that we've actually never met face to face before, but I've known your name for a while. And you met Mark, I think you said how many years ago when you were how old?
Oh man, probably eight years ago. I was about like 23, I believe.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I'm glad we're getting to catch up. So the people have already heard your bio, and so just talk a little bit about what have you been up to these days and how has your COVID life been?
Yeah, so what have I been up to these days? On the personal side of the world, I was recently married.
Congrats. Yes, that's amazing.
Thank you very much. A COVID wedding. So
wow.
Everybody can unpack that for what it is. It was like rescheduled 4 times. It started off with like 150 people, went down to about 12. And it was but it was still a beautiful day. At the end of the day, it's like I'm still getting married, the woman who I love more than anything. Our families are there. So not exactly how we saw it going, but it was still wonderful. Went on a honeymoon down to Mexico and then 2020 fashion, ended up having to evacuate and leave Mexico with a tropical storm and hurricane coming in.
No.
So that's what's been going on personal life-wise recently. And then on the business side of things, just kind of continuing to try to, I think, improve my craft, coming in more as a coach first, and then I think as like a sales marketer second. That's where I'm spending a lot of my time right now, is figuring out how to continue to grow our coaching services to help more people and to kind of bring this vision of helping more people just be like athletes and be athletic to life.
Yeah. Good for you. Well, again, congrats on the wedding. To do all of that during COVID and try and make it to Mexico. I mean, that's bold. Those are some bold choices, my friend. So yeah, bravo to you. Funny enough, I actually did get married in Mexico, but it was back when that was easier thing to do.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So just tell me this. One of the things that stood out to me when I was reading your bio was that you consider yourself what you call an educated meathead. And so I just love the phrase, just because, I think oftentimes people think of those as, as mutually exclusive. you can't be a meathead and educated. So just tell me a little bit, what makes you identify like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So my original first love was training and being in the weight room. That just stemmed from being an athlete for as long as I can remember. From, I think, the time that I was capable of walking and picking up a ball, I was playing sports, whether it was football, basketball, baseball, something. I was in a sport, I was competing. And then at a certain point along that trajectory, you realize, well, there's this thing called a weight room. And if I want to take this sport seriously, I should probably go work out in the weight room. And I was very fortunate to have kind of good experiences and coaches early on. And so I totally fell in love with the weight room, being under the bar, kind of like, how is it that humans become bigger, faster, and stronger? And I became really obsessed with that question. Yeah. And the more you peel back the layers of the onion of that question, the more you realize it's like, oh, well, I need to go learn some chemistry. I need to learn physics. I need to learn biochemistry and human physiology. So for me, that was like the natural inclination was to start diving down into the science so I could better understand how to create this change for other humans. So that's kind of where it comes from. It's like I love the in the weeds science. Like I am a chemistry, biochem, like human physiologist at heart,
Yeah.
but I also love to go lift weights and blast music and like get an arm pump. So I think that we can marry those two worlds
Yeah.
and be really happy with them.
Yeah, good for you, James. You can be whatever you want to be. You can be both.
Mm-hmm.
You be yourself. That's amazing. Well, I'm going to ask you what maybe is like maybe more of a philosophical question. So, forgive me if this is a terrible question, but one of the things I see a lot of my clients at Business for Unicorns working through, who are all fitness business owners, one of the things I see them struggling with on a regular basis, and people I just see in the industry, is this label of athlete that I see so many brick and mortar fitness businesses, some online as well, who are started by people like yourself who come from a sports background and really resonate with being an athlete and being someone who can perform at that level. But then I see them try to bring that idea and that philosophy and that language to a general population. And I see it as this, this balancing act that I don't see a lot of people getting right. Certainly CrossFit has thrown their hand in the ring here by really thinking of all of their members as athletes and have attracted a certain kind of person who I think identifies that way. But I'm trying to find my question here. I think my question is this: is for you personally and the people you work with, what makes that label or that identity as being an athlete so meaningful?
Yeah, I think that's a phenomenal question. And I'll be honest that it's still something that I'm working on and critiquing on like a weekly basis.
Mm,
Just the more conversations and interviews I can have with our clients, the more I'm better able to define this thing that I think people are having a hard time defining clearly.
yeah.
So the best explanation I can give right now is kind of twofold. And this is the one that I've heard from a lot of our clients is like when they hear athlete. So one, a lot of our clients are former in air quotes, I'll kind of explain that in a second, former
Sure.
athletes, right? In high school and college, maybe professionally, they're
Yeah.
just used to being on a team, training, competing, and kind of like being well-rounded.
Mm-hmm.
And then the thing you've known your entire life tends to just disappear like in a day. You graduate high school, you graduate college, you retire from a sport, and that's totally gone.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of left with not a lot of outlets in terms of continuing to train to be this very well-rounded athlete who's strong, who carries muscle, who's powerful, who's well-conditioned, and who moves well.
Mm.
And so that's where we're going to try to insert ourselves. And the two terms
Sure.
that have come up a bunch are life-proof athlete is one that a lot of my clients like and I think resonate with. Just this concept of like, I don't want to be a one-trick pony. I want to be like a well-rounded human because it's kind of my belief and our belief at Rebel that if you're a human, you're an athlete. Like, I'm not saying you need to deadlift 600 pounds or be able to go do crazy things, but it's like you should be able to pick up something heavy off the ground and maybe go sprint or jump or go ruck up in the mountains. So it's this concept of being able to kind of like tackle whatever life throws at you and to do so successfully
Sure.
and to make sure that you feel good while doing so. And I think the hard part for this population, the biggest thing we're working on is how can I bring competition to the table for this population of people? Because I think the athlete label is phenomenal, but what CrossFit did well is they kind of created their own label and they said, hey, here's a competitive outlet for you people that like this sort of thing.
Sure.
And nobody in our realm yet, what I would consider more of like strength conditioning, athlete-based training, has figured out a way, or not figured out a way, but
implemented a way, yeah.
implemented and executed a way for people that have this interest in being this well-rounded athlete who has what I refer to as like 6 pillars of performance, right? You're strong,
Sure.
you have muscle, power, endurance, movement, that sort of stuff. A way for those people to actually still have kind of like some competition and community camaraderie and a game day feel to what they're doing. So that's a big project that's constantly in the back of my mind of how do I bring that to the table? Because I think that in itself helps define this vague athlete concept.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's one of the things I think can be really useful from bringing a sports world into training a general population, or in your case, training trainers, who are no longer on sports teams, but want to train like maybe their former athletic self who was. And when you bring the athlete ideology to the table competition comes along with it. And I think that's the competition part, the friendly competition part, the leaderboard kind of thing. I think you're right that's maybe one of the ways that that training like an athlete can appeal to a broader population, is finding a way to leverage that competition in a way that fans the flames of connection and camaraderie,
Hmm.
and challenging oneself. So that's really smart. Yeah, I love that so much. Well, thanks for diving down that little rabbit hole for me. We could stay on this topic, but I want to cover a bunch of topics with you. So next, I want to ask you about this. Something I know you're really passionate about, and I think you really value in yourself, is your work ethic. And so just talk to me a little about what makes you think you have a great work ethic.
So the work ethic is a blessing and a curse, and I can explain why that is. But I very much get my work ethic from my parents, and then from like our larger family. Just that was how I was raised. Like I was raised that you show up and you work hard, and whatever you reap is because of the effort, that you put into it. We were not the type of family where it's like, oh, you're so good at this or you're so skilled at this. It was, hey, like you got this outcome because look at how hard you worked. Look at the time you put in and the effort. And that sank in for me like really early on in life, that if I show up and put in the time and the effort and energy, and I do everything I can within my power, then the outcome is going to be what the outcome is going to be, right? And
Mm,
that's from my dad, that's from my mom, that's from my grandpa, from my aunts and uncles. It's just like a very blue collar, hardworking mentality family that I was kind of like ingrained with for the time that I popped out, right? Um, and so I've always had that, whether it was playing baseball and like I'm going to spend more time in a cage than anybody else because I want to get more reps in. Or if it's in school, like I will outstudy and out prepare you for a test. Right? I've
yeah.
just always prided myself on, if I lose, it's not going to be because I didn't put in the work.
Yeah.
It's just because of that's how it played out.
Yeah. Well, it
And
sounds like that served you and your family, for that matter, in lots of positive ways. And you also mentioned that it's kind of a double-edged sword. So what's the other side?
yeah, so the double-edged sword, and this is on the entrepreneurial side, is that sometimes locking yourself in a room for 8 to 12 hours and being willing to do that and kind of enjoying it
Yeah.
isn't the most efficient and best way to get things done, right?
Yeah.
It's like I'm willing to overwork and put in really long hours when sometimes maybe I should take a step back and reflect on the process and say, maybe I could send this to someone else, or I could redo this so that I can decrease my workload.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the double-edged sword of it, is I don't mind doing it. So sometimes I think miss the opportunity to take a step back and reflect on more of an efficiency conversation,
Yeah.
as opposed to just like, I'll just be a workhorse and get this done.
Sure. Sure. It's a tough balance, because you're right that I think, we both know that if you want to start a new business, you want to build something from nothing, you need to be ready to work your ass off, right? You need to be ready to put in the hours and lock yourself in a room and do whatever it takes, at least for the first few years, and to do whatever it takes and wear all the hats. And then at some point, that strategy probably doesn't serve you the way it used to, and knowing when is hard. So what are some moments you can think of where you decided to go in a different direction, where you decided, hey, I'm not going to lock myself in a room and do this all myself, I'm not going to carry this, I'm going to actually ask for help, or I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to delegate. So give me an example of a time where you chose another thing and it worked for you.
Yeah, so I think it's any time that you realize that you have become the primary bottleneck in your business,
Mm,
and you realize that there are other tasks that are really important that you need to be working on,
yeah.
but you're only able to spend like maybe 30 minutes to an hour on them a day, because
Yeah.
it's like, oh, well, I'm responding to email and I'm dealing with customer service and I'm scheduling blog posts and I'm scheduling podcasts. And so it's that reflection on, okay, these things are highly repeatable tasks that are just sucking time from my schedule, and I'm not getting the opportunity to think and create from like a top down standpoint. So I need to come up with workflows and checklists on these things. I need to train someone on how to do it so that I don't have to like spend 4 or 5 hours every week repeatedly doing these things. So I think if I have anything that's a repeatable task,
Yeah.
my goal is to like do it a few times, record how to do it, get a checklist, and then pass it off to somebody else.
Yeah, that's so well said, James. And I think that when people can see that they are the barrier to their own business's growth, where they are the bottleneck, that's a powerful moment to then choose something else to say, okay, well, I'm going to do this one more time or two more times. I'm going to record how I do it. I'm going to screen cap it. I'm going to write it down so I can actually start to hand it off to someone. I think that's so smart. And I think when people are able to do that, they'll see so much payoff right away. The thing that when I'm talking to people, the thing that gets in their way is some people, and this is not a judgment, this is, I think, just the way we're wired. Some people just have a blind spot there where they can't see that they're the thing that is the bottleneck to their progress. So, I mean, I think, ultimately, I think we know that the solution there is just practicing more self-awareness, or maybe, so I'm just saying, what advice would you give to those folks who might be the bottleneck but don't know it?
So I hope that they have some form of like a planner. Like it
Mm,
doesn't have to be fancy. It could just be a sheet of paper where they're kind of laying out how they're structuring their days.
yeah.
Like just take a couple of days and just jot down notes or like have like print off a timesheet for the day. And whenever you're doing a task, just like start coloring in like 30-minute blocks.
Mm,
After a week, go back and look and say, okay, like how many of these blocks are colored to doing things that are like not creative or helping the business move forward. They're just things that are keeping the business operating.
yeah.
So that's usually for me. Like if I ever feel I'm getting to that point, I'm getting overwhelmed, I will time track. I'll just write everything out on a sheet of paper for a few days. I want to see how my time is being spent. And it's like, okay, I'm not spending enough time creating. So we need to rework some of this other stuff in the middle.
Yeah, I think that's such good advice, James. I think, and for listeners, go do that, right? I also think doing a kind of a time audit like that or a time tracker like that I think it's good kind of just personal productivity hygiene to do like twice a year, once a quarter, just to see how are you spending your time and is it on the most effective things. I mean, I'll talk to business owners on a regular basis. Again, this is not a judgment. This is just the reality. And they'll talk to me how busy they are and how full their schedule was. And I know that their finances are not great. So I'll ask, well, how much time did you spend this week on marketing and sales? And the number is often zero, which is just terrifying. And the perfect example of this, of just like, well, you need to grow the business, you need more revenue coming in, and you spent zero time on this thing that is the number one priority. And there's rarely a week that has gone by for the last 3 years where it's not someone I talk to who's in that boat. And this is a classic example of we get stuck in these routines and we don't recognize that we're the ones holding ourselves back or holding the business back.
I
Yes,
think part of it also, sorry to interrupt you,
please.
is it's like I'll refer like my parents' generation and their parents' generation that there was a pride that they carried in doing the work themselves.
Yeah.
And so I think that's another thing sometimes people have to work through. Sometimes people wear that badge of honor of like, I'm putting in 14 hours a day. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
grinding and doing all this stuff. It's like I
Yeah.
can totally respect and appreciate that because like that just comes from those two generations and it's going to be
Yeah.
instilled in their kids. But you've got to like this is I'm actually in this transition right now, right? Like I'm in the process. That's what I've been doing all day today. So I'm going to do the next 2 days. Like I'm getting things ready to be offloaded
Yep.
because like you said, like I haven't been able to spend the time on the sales and marketing side that I know I need to.
Yeah.
So like I need clearing space. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I
need
think
less on my calendar.
totally. I think you're absolutely right. I think it is something that is ingrained in us at an early age. Maybe it's even cultural. It has to do with capitalism and this kind of internalized capitalism we all feel. But I often refer to it as like the busy badge. It's like we have this badge of honor that's just like busy. And if you're like, how are you doing? Everyone's answer is always so busy. And it's like we take some pride in that. I think the other thing people often battle here is perfectionism. Where it's
Mhm.
like, I can't delegate. No one else could do it like I can do it. No one else will ever get it right. And even we know that's just a fallacy, but it's one of those things that's about kind of that sense of pride. So I'm glad you brought that up because I think it's a key factor. Um, let's switch gears. I want to talk about something else. Another thing that I know that you think a lot about when it comes to serving your clients is how do you create value for your clients? How do you kind of bring them in into your fold to get them to know you, like you, and trust you by creating value? So just talk to me a little bit. What's your approach to kind of, this is a very generic term that gets tossed around a lot. Value,
Mhm.
value, value, create value, add value, so just talk to me a little bit. What's your approach to like making this value creation really real in your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there are a couple of things here to unpack. I think the first is like one of the phrases that I really like from Seth Godin is kind of like early on, you need to determine what change it is that you want to bring to the world and who you want to do that change with. So I think that is always underpinning this value conversation. You have to have really good answers to those good questions.
Yeah. Well, anytime you bring up Seth Godin on this podcast, I get to give you like a round of applause.
Yes.
I mean, he's just my hero.
He's wonderful. He's so amazing. Like, read all his books.
Yes, read it all. We'll get on his newsletter. He's like the only newsletter I still belong to, because daily one, because it's short little snippets. Every friggin' snippet is so brilliant. I don't know how he does it. He's been doing it for years. Just like thousands of snippets that blow my mind. Sorry, I just went on a little, fangirl moment for Seth Godin. But
okay, no, you
please continue. Please continue.
But yeah, I think to continue on that Seth Godin train, I think he does a really good job of distinguishing between like strategies and tactics. And I think everybody wants to jump to tactics, with tactics being like, how do I run my Facebook funnel? How do I like put these things together? But if you don't have the underlying strategy first, then your tactics are going to be empty, because your tactics are filled with whatever the strategy is. So I would tell people to pause and like spend time on your strategy, despite the fact that it is going to be outrageously frustrating probably, because it's harder than you think it's going to be. But once you kind of have that, then I think the next place in terms of value that I think of, and we were talking about this a little bit off air, is the book, The Go-Giver, which is a beautiful book. I'm in love with it. It's not mind blowing by any means. Like, you're not going to read it and be like, oh, I just figured out quantum physics, right? But I think you come out of reading that book, at least I did, it was like just such a positive viewpoint on like the type of business that I wanted to make, with the notion of like, my goal is to provide as much value as possible to the largest number of people that fit within kind of like my strategy. And so value for me a lot of times is like, how much content can I give them for free? Right? It's okay, you have found me in one way or another, whichever like lead flow place in we have. Now it's an opportunity for me to say, hey, let's go grab a cup of coffee and let's start building this relationship. And that's, doing a good job of like sending short emails a few times a week, just helping with problems that I know that they have. That's recording a podcast every week. That's taking the time to respond to emails. If you reply to an email that goes out on my newsletter, I still take the time to send you a response. So I think it's too important for me not to.
Yeah.
So I think it's those little things. And part of it also, I think, is just like being a decent human being. Right. I think businesses sometimes get lost in this. I will throw United Airlines under the bus, because I think they're awful at this.
Feel free. Right? You can trash United on this podcast any day.
Oh, yeah.
And American, really. American Airlines also blows. So.
Oh, yeah. Terrible. But it's like, just be a good human being, right? It's like, we have refund policies in place. But like, if somebody emails me on day 31 after day 30, and they're like, hey, like, I haven't really enjoyed this, can I get a refund? Like, yeah, you can absolutely get a refund. Like, if you don't love what we just did together, if this isn't helping you live a better life, then absolutely, I don't want you to have to pay for it. I would like, can you just tell me where did I miss? Where did we go wrong? And so I think it's that relationship building phase of give. And then like the ask that comes eventually isn't that hard. It becomes easier because now they know, like, and trust you. But I think a lot of people don't like that relationship building phase, because that's the vast majority of work.
Yeah. And it can be awkward. It's like dating.
It is.
Absolutely. It can be awkward. And there's sometimes you're not a fit. And that's just weird, But I love so much what you're sharing. I wanted to kind of go back and break it down maybe a little bit further for our listeners. So you mentioned there's a strategy part first that leads to tactics, and a lot of the stuff at the tactical level you went through, but really the tactical level is all about providing as much value as you can, just, giving them as much you can for free to kind of draw them in and build that relationship. But I want to just go back and talk a little bit about the strategy level. So when you're thinking at that higher level of strategy, what are the kinds of things you're thinking about?
Absolutely. So there are a couple of pieces there. So piece number one is answer the question, what change do you want to bring to the world? Answer the question, who you want to make that change with. If you don't have good answers to those questions, then you're never going to get traction. Part three, again, I'm just going to keep repping Seth Godin here.
Keep going.
I think he has an XY axis.
Yeah.
That I'm in love with in terms of once you kind of know the change you want to make and who you want to make the change with, then you kind of got to figure out where do I fall on this kind of like XY axis of like features or like what my product is going to be. And you want to be able to place yourself in your own quadrant, right? And he has like a beautiful example using chocolate bars about how you can just kind of put like cheap and tasty on like your two axes, and then you can place people on the axes.
Yep.
But you can create your own axes and labels so that you can end up in your own quadrant.
Yep.
So I think that is like a really important part as well, so that you can be somewhat unique. But then the fourth part of this is, I think, the most important, the one I started doing this year and I will continue to do forever. So there's a book called The Brain Audit, which is absolutely fantastic. It's on a Kindle. It's like $2.99. It'll be 3 of the best dollars you've ever spent in your life. Just go to the testimonial chapter and literally rip his 6 testimonial questions and start debriefing everybody that agrees to debrief with you, because the 6 testimonial questions tell you exactly like what their pain points are, the hurdle that they had to overcome to make a purchase, what they liked about the product, because those are the things that you're trying to like take and then like you're just taking that and putting it right back into your content production, because they're telling you exactly what their problems and frustrations are. And then they're telling you exactly how you help solve them. And you don't even have to like make stuff up. You just literally can like copy and paste from the transcript, just send it to Rev, copy and paste from the transcript, and it goes right into your sales copy, or it goes into like the content production that you're doing. So that's the biggest one. The biggest change for me there is, as opposed to trying to create it all myself, I'm doing a better job of asking and listening, and then just giving them exactly whatever they're telling me.
Yeah. This is all gold, James. I hope listeners, I hope you're writing shit down, because that's a lot of great advice. I'll just kind of underscore some things I heard you say, just to repeat it, to say, hey, listeners, pay attention to this. The first thing is just getting really clear about the change you want to make in the world. Why does your business exist? That might mean writing a mission statement or a vision, or getting clear on your values, or getting clear on your client avatar, which is kind of the next step, is who you want to make that change with. And oftentimes the mistake I see people make early on in their business is not getting specific enough about that avatar, about who they want to make the change with. They often start by thinking that, and I get it, because early on, I think I did the same thing. They start with from a place of scarcity. It's like, I need any dollar anyone wants to give me, so I'm going to market to everyone. I want to be for everyone. And, as any good marketer knows, the minute you're trying to speak to everyone or attract everyone, you're kind of attracting no one. And that's hard to do early on. So I want to fan the flames of that. It's like, go get clear on your client avatar. And then the other 2 things you said was figure out how you fit in the picture of your market, right? So amongst all your competitors, or in your industry, in your neighborhood even, how do you fit on that values axis, or however you define your 2 axes? How do you fit on there? Because that'll help you define your kind of unique value proposition and your brand. And so that's gold. And then this last piece about getting clear on kind of your testimonials and just go and use that stuff from that $3 book. It sounds like fantastic. But whenever you ask for testimonials, people also often make this mistake of just having a conversation, and you really need really clear prompts.
Yeah, use a script.
Yeah, use a script. Give them an actual outline to follow. Because when you do that, to your point, you're asking and then listening. You're building a business that the people you serve tell you they want. And if you do that well, you don't really ever need to have any of your own good ideas. We joke at Mark Fisher Fitness, all the best things we've ever done were our clients' ideas.
Yeah.
And so I'm so glad you say that.
I don't like guessing. And I think that's the biggest difference between like early on when I started like playing with business stuff. Like I was not a business owner in my mid-20s. I was just like dabbling.
Yeah.
I thought that I had to just create everything out of thin air and just like poof, like it all has to come from me.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you talk to successful people and they're just better at like using scripts, and then they just talk and listen to their customers. Because then when it comes time to create content or to write a sales page, I literally don't have to make up anything. It's all right there. I can just take my highlighted scripts, insert, and we're good to go.
I think that's it. I think that's why I say I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think so often we forget that, we're in this business to be of service to our clients and to serve them. We need to hear them. and see them and ask them frequently what's working for you, what's not working for you. And, I just know every business that I see that's good at that, good at creating that dialogue, just gets farther faster. They
Mm-hmm.
really do. So I'm so glad you brought that up. So that's all the strategy stuff. And then I want to hear just a few more ideas of tactics that you've tried that you felt really worked for you. Because when it comes to content creation these days and content marketing, I know a lot of people who feel like they're just spinning their wheels, just making as many podcasts and videos and Instagram slide things and TikToks and whatever the fuck, just making all the things they can. And they're not sure how to wrangle all of that to really draw in the kind of people they want. So what are some of the tactics that have worked best for you?
So I'm a big email guy.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm going to take the time, effort, and energy to do it, I want to own it. So I don't love social media. Like I'm not a
Mm-hmm.
big fan of someone being able to just change my organic reach, or like TikTok closed at one point out
Yep.
of nowhere, right? So I'm not a huge fan of someone else owning my traffic. So point number one I would have is get emails. Or
Mm-hmm.
even now, I haven't done it yet, but like the SMS world is getting more and more
Yeah.
popular as another way to kind of own your own
Gotta get
community.
phone numbers. Gotta get phone numbers. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's the big one. Like the email marketing for me is great because I know that when I send an email, assuming that like my list health is good,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to get to inboxes. Now, whether or not they open and read it is totally dependent upon am I doing a good job providing value and solving problems for these people.
Yeah.
The other really attractive part about email is that it's really easy to automate. And so I'm in the process of redoing some of this right now, but like I'm going to have email funnels built out that's going to try to take people to the different things that I think can help them. And by having that running 24/7, 365 without me having to worry about it or touch it, I'm continually kind of like bringing in leads, fostering a relationship with that lead, saying, hey, I have this thing that I think that you will really like and benefit from. If you say no, that's totally fine. You just get segued into like my normal email marketing. And now I can just continue to build a relationship for you. If you say yes, you're a client and we're off and running.
Yeah.
And so that's for me. Like email, I think is the big one that I spend the vast majority of my time on.
Yeah. I think I'm so glad you say that because I think there's so many people who have thought for a while that email is dying, and it's not. It's really not. I think, you might have to have larger lists than you used to get as far as maybe you used to be able to get in terms of conversion rates. But I actually I haven't seen any data to back that up. That's just my intuition.
Mm-hmm.
But just, knowing that I feel like, back in the early 2000s, in places I worked, we didn't have big email lists, but we seemed to do a lot of sales from them. But
Yeah.
these days, I think it's just, you need to do more of a volume game. But ultimately, your point is so well taken. I hope listeners hear this, is that when you have someone's email and phone number, you kind of own that lead in a way you don't when they're just following you on Instagram or responding to an ad on Facebook. Those things can be useful, and that should be part of some people's strategies. But gathering emails and phone numbers so you can own them, I think is something that's not dying and still relevant. And to your point, text-based marketing is just huge. Text and chat is just kind of the new-ish frontier. Yeah. Let's just talk about the next part of this funnel then, because we talked a bunch about strategy, talked about some tactics, and you're all in on email, which I think is fantastic. And then what about the sales part? Because this is another place where I see people stumble a ton, where I'll tell you the mistakes I see, and then you can tell them how to not do this. The mistakes I see are this. I see people not practice or have a roadmap for their sales conversations, just kind of get on the phone or get face-to-face and just talk to their clients. That's one mistake I see. Another mistake I see is they are not practiced at asking for the sales. They tap dance around it, or it's soft, or it's confusing, or it's not very compelling. And then the third thing I see people do, I'm giving you a lot to do here. The third thing I see people do that's messed up is they just don't ever follow up. So if it's a no or a maybe in the moment, they're like, oh, well, they weren't really that into it. And there's no follow up afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm not making fun because we've made all these mistakes. But so what do you say to those folks who don't have a script, are kind of uncomfortable asking and don't have a good way of asking, and then aren't doing a ton of follow-up? I'm going to guess you want them to do the opposite, but go.
Yeah, pretty much the polar opposite of all three of those things would be good. As far as scripts go, that's another one. Like I won't do anything anymore unless I have a script.
Mm.
I will not wing anything. So if I'm trying to run a sales call, I'm going to do research and try to find somebody who I think does a really good job converting on sales calls.
Mm.
If I have to buy a product, if I have to sign up for coaching, I will, because I want whatever I have to do to just literally get the script that I can kind of copy and then just fill in with my pieces, because I don't want to try to reinvent the wheel. Someone's already figured it out and it's working. I want to try to not steal. I want to try to pay that person for help so I can take it and use it for myself. So
totally. Can I be devil's advocate and interrupt you? So let's just pretend that I'm one of my clients and you're me suggesting that I'm one of my clients. I will say, yeah, but James, I don't want to sound like everyone else. I don't want to be a robot. I want to be authentic and be me. So I can't use a script.
Yep. Great question. Here, actually, hold on. This is my sales call script. Great. Right here. So the way that I have it set up, and I'll give the person credit who I took it from, his name is Taki Moore. He's an Australian-based business coach.
Great.
And so what I liked about his framework is it's kind of like broken up into kind of like a tic-tac-toe board almost. Mm. And so you have like themes for each box, right? And so I'm not like just blatantly reading a script off a page. I'm just moving my way from box to box. I have trigger questions in each box, kind of like the big things I know I want to hit. Outside of that, I'm just going to let the conversation kind of go where it is, but I know exactly the order and the flow in which my conversation is going to go.
Great.
And so, I
just want to say that. So thank you for going on this tangent with me. But listeners, we talk about script. We don't mean reading word for word what someone else wrote. Oftentimes we use the word script. We're talking about structure. An outline or a roadmap or a structure, exactly, for moving the person from the part A of the conversation to part B to part C. You have to be guiding the conversation in a direction, because you actually have an end point, which is sell them something. Yeah. And if you're not guiding them there, you're often meandering in all kinds of directions, not helpful to your goal. And so I think, using a script or an outline or a structure that has been vetted and used and shown to work is a great starting point. And it absolutely allows you to be yourself and interject your personality. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for going down that tangent with me. So having a script, what else do you say to these folks?
Okay, I think so. Having the script is big, and it's big because one, you have a repeatable process. And if you have a repeatable process, then you can actually start to assess whether or not this thing you're doing is working. Yep. And then you have something that you can actually tweak and measure. So like, just to wrap up that part of the conversation.
Yeah, totally.
So part two, and I honestly, I've totally forgotten. So which was part two?
No, I think what we were at was just saying that, this is having a script was one. Two was actually asking for the sale.
Yes.
So instead of just being like, well, here's some options. What sounds good? That's just so wishy-washy all the time. Yeah. So
I think that asking for the sale, and like having been a person who's super uncomfortable asking for a sale early in my career, I think there are a couple of important pieces here. One, I really like the book Getting Everything You Can Out of All You've Got from Jay Abraham. In that book, he talks about this kind of like uncomfortableness with sales. And he makes the incredible point that like he is so excited and like so happy to like pitch this person a sale, because he so firmly believes that when this person buys this product, their life is going to become so much better. And so that's what I always come back to. It's like when I have someone on a phone call, if I'm going to do a webinar and I'm going to pitch a sale, it's like, hey, I'm pitching this to you because I know deep down in my heart of hearts that it's true to the change I want to make. And I know like how much better this is going to make your life. I know in 3 months, you're going to be so happy that you made this purchase, because you're going to have made so much progress. You're going to be so happy with where you are, not just with your training, but everything else in life seems to get better when that clears up for people. Yeah. And so for me, like the sale is great because I know how good it can be for this person. And if they choose it's not for them, that is totally fine. Like that is their decision. But I think you have to come back to that question and be comfortable knowing that like what I'm offering this person really, like I'm not selling them snake oil. What I'm offering this person is honest to God going to make their life so much better. Yeah. And that's, I think, the mindset you have to have. Yeah, that's really well said, James. And I think, that anyone who's been in sales for a long time will tell you that it's really hard to sell if you don't believe in the product.
And one of the best, salespeople we've ever had at Mark Fisher Fitness was Brian Patrick Murphy. He was kind of one of our founding team members. And Brian Patrick Murphy believed so much at what we were doing at MFF that I know he would borderline bring himself to tears during sales conversations because he would believe in it. And if he's listening to this, I'm sure he'll be laughing because it's true. That he was so passionate about it that, he could sell it to people who, didn't even live in New York. They would come and visit and he would be able to sell them a membership, even though they don't even live there. He was that passionate about it. And I think that's the place where a lot of people I talk to get hung up, is I think just the act of selling is seedy or shady or evil in some way. And that's only true if you're selling bullshit. Right? If you're selling snake oil,
if you don't believe in what you're doing, it's going to be super awkward.
Yeah, if you're selling a used car that's a lemon, then sure, then sales is really shady and messed up. But if you're selling something that's truly you believe has the potential to change someone's life for the better, then you have an obligation to sell them. You have an obligation to help them get past their own hangups and obstacles and barriers, to get them to start to do the thing you want them to do or you think is best for them. And that's, you're the expert there. So I think you're so right that confident sales starts with confidence in your product and passion for your product. The last thing I had brought up was follow-up. When people get a no or a maybe, oftentimes that's the end of the conversation, sadly. So what's your approach to follow-up?
So it kind of depends like the avenue, if it's just a one-on-one sales call or if it goes through something more like one-to-many, like a webinar. A one-on-one sales call, if you don't make a purchase, like I'll send you an email the next day. I'm going to say, hey, Susan, whatever your name was, like, I loved our chat yesterday. I'm going to reiterate back a few things to them from my notes about, hey, it sounds like this is going so well in your life. I'm so excited for this, this, and this. And I think that the rest of this year is going to be so great for you. If you ever think that what I do could be of help or service, I'm here, I'm one email away. Best of luck with everything moving forward, James, right? Something along those lines. I'm not going to try to push them. I'm not going to be awkward about it. It's just, hey, I really enjoyed getting to meet you yesterday. I hope you got some value out of our call. If you need me, I'm here.
Sure.
And I'll kind of probably I'll send that email and leave it at that. And then maybe a month later, I'll just send a follow-up hey, how are things going?
Yeah, I think that's great. I think, it's so important to treat it as if, I hate to say date because some people are not good at dating, but in the best case scenario, you would like to think if you want to date with someone, it wasn't great, you at least the next day saying, thanks, it wasn't a great fit, but I hope you had a great time. When I see you around, I hope we can be, friends, whatever
Yeah.
And that's it's at the very least, I think, our moms would want us to do to be full of manners. It's just say it was great to spend time with you. And then you're right, that follow up a little later, another week or two later, or a month later, say, hey, I'm just thinking about you. Did you find a solution that made sense for you? I was just thinking about you. I have a new offer if this is something that's a better fit for you. I think keeping them, in your sphere of influence, it's going to be great for both of you until they find a solution. Yeah. So awesome. Well, we took quite a little deep dive, didn't we? From value creation into sale, marketing, and then selling. And I know it's time already for us to start kind of wrapping things up, but I feel like I have a million more questions. So we'll have to do this again sometime.
Yes, absolutely.
But in the interest of time, just tell my listeners a little bit about what do you have coming up? Where can they find you to learn more about your work and what you're doing these days?
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest things that we have kind of coming up, or let's start with where to find me. That's probably easiest.
Yeah, sure.
So Rebel Performance is my business. That's where you can find me and all the stuff that we have going on. Like I said, we're on Instagram. I don't prioritize it. So the easiest way to stay in the loop with what we're doing is to go to the website and to opt into one of the free downloads we have. But the biggest things that we have going on right now are just continually trying to, I think, spread the message and kind of reach the people who share our belief that if you're a human, you're an athlete. And I want to train you to be this well-rounded, life-proof, what we call an apex athlete, because we kind of like that. We found it catches well.
Yeah.
So we're just kind of continually trying to spread that message and bring more people into our sphere of influence and kind of give them the training and the community and the camaraderie that they feel like they've been missing.
Yeah.
And then kind of a second unrelated thing is starting to come out with more kind of like courses and education for coaches to help them better appreciate how it is that we kind of do our athlete development, the programming and the conversations and the sales and stuff. But that's a little farther down the road. So yeah, just if you just Google Rebel Performance, will be the first thing that pops up. That is by far the best place to find us.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'll include some links down in the show notes below so people can find all of that. And James, I've been playing around with different kinds of questions I ask my guests at the end. And today I'm going to ask you this question, this final question, which is, what's just one fun thing you're looking forward to that you have coming up in the next few months or so? What's one fun thing in your life you're looking forward to?
Yeah, so my wife and I are moving back to Salt Lake City.
Oh, wow.
So we've been in Santa Cruz, California for this year, and we're moving back to Salt Lake City where we own a house. I told you off air we had this whole sabbatical year planned, which didn't really work out. But yeah, I'm excited to move back to Salt Lake City. I am totally in love with the mountains. I like being able to get outside and hike and camp and do all that amazing stuff. Granted, you can't do as much of it in the winter.
Yeah.
And like I've got some of my best friends in the world live there. So like we're kind of excited to get back and get settled again and like have a nice Friendsgiving and just kind of continue our life in Salt Lake City.
That's amazing. Well, good for you. Best of luck with your move. Best of luck with your growing business here. It's incredible. I'm excited to kind of continue watching your journey. Thanks so much for adding so much value to my listeners today. I mean, there's so many great things I hope they took notes on. So thank you for being so generous with your time and your ideas. And so, let's stay in touch. We'll do this again sometime.
Absolutely, Michael. This was an absolute pleasure. I loved it.
Yeah. Thanks, James.
Welcome.
Hey friends, before you go, just one more thing. If you enjoy this podcast, you get value out of it, you enjoy listening, please share this podcast, comment below. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe. Please share it with friends and family. We don't spend any money on marketing or advertising. And so the only way people find out about this podcast is from you. So please do everything you can to share it with friends and fellow colleagues in the fitness industry. We love making it and we want to keep doing it for a long, long time. So I appreciate your support. Go have a kick-ass day. Bye.